Welcome back. We are now on chapter 13, and I'm going to split this into two parts, make it a little bit easier, less ponderous, if you will. It is kind of a long section, but it's all about developing that speech from start to finish, everything you need to know to get a speech written, okay? So let's get started with your speech preparation checklist. A successful speech, like it says here, is more about preparation than anything else. You will notice when you prepare and give presentations on a regular basis that you may have a little bit of speaking anxiety at the beginning, and that's about the words, that's about what you have to say and what are people going to think of me and all that good stuff. After a while, you start realizing it's not so much about the words. Honestly, I've never had a student die of words. Okay, and the anxiety is about, do I have everything I need to do? Am I prepared? Is it the right stuff? Okay, and really, preparation is 100% the key to success in any speech preparation. Okay, so I want you to be prepared, and I want to make sure you have these things to get you prepared. One, time. Start early. Don't wait to the last minute to start preparing a speech, because if you do that, you are setting yourself up for failure every time. I guarantee it. Okay, time to prepare. Make sure to start early. Get your checklist. I'm going to give you a checklist in just a moment. If you need to have a copy of it or print it out or even write it down, you do what you need to do, but make sure you've got that checklist so you can go down it and say, did I do this, do this, do this, do this? And then, of course, you're going to need a computer. Although I love and I prefer library research, if you were to go to the library, they are fabulous people. They can help with research, etc. You still, might end up with some research independently on your own. You can still access the Victoria College Library, the UHV Library. Most colleges have libraries that are accessible, public libraries, etc. There are all kinds of databases and wonderful resources that you can access when you are preparing your research for your presentation. And depending on the topic, sometimes you have to go outside the library to get information. It just happens. And of course, you're going to need your computer for your writing portion of your speech, which is preparation outline, speech outline, and speaker's outline. You're going to need note cards. Note cards are a very handy tool, and you can use several different sizes. Some people use the 3x5, 3.5 by 5. Some people use 4x6. It depends on you and the size that you prefer. I did have some cards in here. I may have shown them to you in another section. If not, I will find them. But I prefer to take a cardstock 8.5 by 11 page, print out on it, and then cut it in half. So my note cards are huge. But you can choose any note cards that work for you. And then you need your practice audience. These are the people that care about you and love you and will help you practice and start giving you some habituation, some extra time presenting, because the more you present, the more comfortable you're going to feel. So let's look at the checklist. Number one, analyze your audience. Who is your audience, and who are you speaking to? Because how you prepare and what you prepare and your visual aids that you prepare are all going to be dependent on who's in your audience. Number two, what's your general purpose? We are going to go through all of these, I promise you. Three, develop your topic. Okay, the general purpose is easy. It's to inform, to persuade, etc. Develop your topic. This can be a little tricky for some people. Then you're going to have a specific purpose, and then your central idea. In communications, we call it a central idea. In my English classes, we called it a thesis statement, so it should sound very familiar. Once you've got all of those pieces, then you do your research. You get all of the research that you need. And we're going to talk about some specifics when it comes to research, what to look for, and how to use it effectively in your presentations. Number 7, write your preparation outline. This is a longer version of the speaker's outline. We're going to talk more about it. Then you're going to narrow that down to the speaker's outline. Prepare your note cards for speaking. Prepare a visual aid for speaking. Quite often, the visual aid does a lot towards easing speaking anxiety, but also helps keep you organized while you're preparing your presentation. Then you're going to practice, and then you're going to deliver your speech. So let's start. What do you need to start with? What was number one? That's right, general purpose. There are three common general purposes, okay, to inform, to persuade, to entertain. There are so many more. I've got some written here: to introduce, to memorialize, to accept, to honor, to commemorate. You can go on and on and on with all of these, okay? But you have to make a decision. Why are you here? Why are you here? Before you begin your preparation for your speech, you have to know the reason you're presenting. If you are at a wedding and you have been asked to be either the maid or matron of honor or the best man, or I was my brother's best woman, you have to know why you're there. And then you have to start putting together some ideas. What is going to happen here? Okay, I know that I'm going to have to get up and I'm going to have to give a speech talking about my brother and his new wife, etc., etc. You know what you're going to be talking about, because each type of speech is going to have some very different requirements because they have different formats. Let's take a look at some of those, okay? To inform. That's what I'm doing right now. This is teaching. You're explaining a concept, a process, informing about a process. If you've ever had to train someone at work, that is the speech to inform. They will vary in length, and it depends entirely on the purpose of the speech, but your goal is to provide useful information. Very easy, right? Then you have the speech to persuade. This can show up in debates, it can influence political change, or to convince people to vote a certain way or buy a certain product, etc. These also vary in length. If you've been told you have 30 minutes to speak, that gives you a lot of time to play with it. But what if you were told you got 5 minutes? That gives you a lot of preparation material too, because you have to figure out how to shorten it and get to the most important pieces. The goal for this speech is to persuade through evidence and reasoning. You have to have evidence. You have to have the reasoning to explain the evidence in order to effect a change. Okay. The next type that we're looking at is a speech to entertain. Some examples there. You got comedians. I have some favorite comedians that sometimes they are NSF, not sufficient, NSFW, not sufficient for work because of the language used. But honestly, there are some comedians out there that keep it so PG and it's beautiful. Entertainers, storytellers. You've got lots of reasons that you would get up to entertain and have to speak during that process. These also vary in length, and I'm sure you can kind of see why. Some comedians have an hour show. Other comedians, they're lucky to get 10 minutes. It depends on where they are. The goal here is just to make the audience smile, make the audience laugh. All right, the next is a speech of introduction. Usually it's introducing a person, although sometimes it can be a concept or a product. They're usually fairly short. You don't want these to be very long because you don't want to lose your audience, because you want to make the main speaker feel welcome. You're going to summarize their qualifications. You're going to give them the reason that they're here, okay? So they can be, you can prepare your audience so that they can get up and speak. You have a speech to memorialize or honor. This is a commemoration speech. It can be a eulogy at a funeral or a wedding toast. I think I just used that as an example. They can vary in length, but honestly, they should be shorter. In many situations like this, people aren't there to hear speeches. They're here to honor whoever it may be. And in this kind of situation, you have to come up with some favorite memories or the best qualities, their accomplishments, things that you would want them, they would want you to brag about, or things that you just want to brag about because you recognize that in them. Then you have a speech to present an award. You've all seen the Academy Awards where they're going through and they have cue cards, so they have practiced this in advance, by the way. They never get up there and do it without practicing. But they get up there and they read a little blurb, and then they tell you who's in the running for the award, and then they announce who won. These are usually very short. You do need to describe the award and the honor it entails. Why did this person get this award? What did they do to earn this recognition? Okay, so you definitely need to get those pieces in there, but yes, they are usually short. Then you have a speech of acceptance. What if you're the one getting the award? Oh, how wonderful. Well, you accept it. And sometimes it's, an acceptance speech is about receiving a political appointment. You were voted for. Yay, I won. You won a competition of some kind. Again, fairly short. People don't want to hear long speeches, especially when you're sitting there saying, I'm so wonderful. Please don't. State why you're grateful, what this means to you. If you have time, name the people who granted you the honor and give credit to those people who deserve it. You've seen the Oscars. Again, sometimes they name anybody and everybody. Sometimes they name just a few people. But they do name people because we are teams. We do not usually get where we are all by ourselves. We have people as our support staff, if you will. I call my husband my emotional support human. We have to have those people standing behind us because it gives us sometimes a little bit more oomph to get going. All right, so now that we know what your general purpose is, and we're going to get to creating the specific purpose, but first you have to come up with a topic. Coming up with a topic can be hard sometimes when I'm told, okay, you're going to be giving a presentation on this date for this purpose. I have to come up with an idea. Who is my audience first, and what do I want to tell them? So brainstorming is a great way to develop topic ideas. And keep these lists. You might use them again in the future, but they can take various forms, okay? You've got stream of consciousness, webbing, listing, and T-chart. And I'm going to go over each one of those. But the first thing you need to do is start with what you know. You already have some knowledge. You have some expertise in some area. And you may not be aware of how much knowledge you have compared to anyone else. By the end of this presentation, the goal, because you've done all the preparation, you're doing the research, you're putting everything together, and so by the end of this presentation, you are the expert, okay? So start with something you know, or something you're very interested in knowing more about. This is an example of stream of consciousness. I had to come up with just a general topic, and so I just started writing. I'm hungry, maybe I should talk about food. What are my favorite foods? I like Italian, I love Italy. Florence is my favorite city, but they call it Firenze. That reminds me of fire. How did they first find fire? I just let the thoughts flow, and sometimes they made absolutely no sense. If you want to finish reading this, go for it. But honestly, I could go back onto this card, and this wasn't on a card, obviously, but I could circle things and say, oh, all of those things kind of look interesting. Maybe those are potential topics. Okay, and I think I ended up down here with Neanderthal food choices. Yeah, because really, think about it. What did they eat? I know they didn't just eat meat all the time. Another form of brainstorming is webbing. I was trying to come up with a sample for you guys, and I thought, well, what? I tell them to look at their hobbies. Okay, so let me think about my hobbies. And I've got bird watching over here. I love bird watching. I take pictures. And I've got reading books because I'm a huge reader. I love to travel. And I've been through several hurricanes, and I've been tracking them for years. So then off of those, I led, okay, so tell me about hurricanes. What could I talk about a lot? Over here, bird watching. I could talk about various things here, and reading books, and traveling. Okay, so I could definitely narrow the scope down in that way, hopefully coming up with a topic. Another method, doesn't matter. You can use T-charts, you can use, I thought I had more information in here, but the method does not actually matter too much, okay? Because quite frankly, the point is just to brainstorm. T-charts, lists, talk to people, write down what they say, ask questions of everybody. What does matter is the quality of the information that you find. What passion or interest is triggered in you to say, Ooh, that seems interesting, and I want to know more. Because if you're not enthusiastic about the topic, your audience is not going to be enthusiastic about the topic. Okay? Now that you've come up with let me make sure I'm in the right spot. Yes, I am. Now that you've come up with a topic, then you have to develop your specific purpose. You already know your general purpose. In some cases, it will be to inform. In some cases, to persuade. It may be whatever. But you're going to develop a specific purpose. It's the most important early step. All of this stuff we've done so far is useful and helpful, but you could do them later if you had to. This is the most important early step of speech preparation. It has to be a declarative statement. It's not a question. You're not saying, what kind of dog breeds are there? You can say, I will discuss Yorkshire Terriers. Okay? It has to be a single topic. I will discuss Yorkshire Terriers and whatever mutt that dog is. That's two things. You can't do that. It has to be a single topic. I will discuss Yorkshire Terriers. Then you have to determine the residual message. And I know that's a strange little phrase, but think in terms of what do you want your audience to remember? What do you want them to walk away remembering from what you had to say? And here's this formula for it. Notice I've got some very specific pieces. The one on the left is to inform or to persuade, whatever. That is where you put in your general purpose. To inform, to persuade, to honor. Okay? Now, if it's to honor, you're not going to put my audience. You're going to put in the name of the person you're honoring. You get the idea. But to inform my audience about, to, for, whatever it may be, and then insert topic here. To inform my audience about Yorkshire Terriers. Very simple. And you would be surprised how difficult this can be for some people. Wow, we've got some massive thunder going on out there. All right, after you come up with the specific purpose, you're going to develop your central idea. This is your thesis, if you will. If you're writing an essay, this would be the thesis that tells the audience what you're going to tell us. The thesis is your roadmap to organize your content, to put everything together. It's the framework your audience needs to follow your key points. And you will state this out loud at the end of your introduction. You will state, I will be telling you about, or I will inform you, or we are going to discuss, and give me the 2 or 3 main points that you're going to discuss. Because if you don't do that, then the audience can get a little lost throughout your presentation. All right. And by the way, narrow your speech to 2 or 3 main points. When you get too many main points in there, it can be overwhelming for your audience to keep track. Now, admittedly, sometimes if you're speaking for an hour, you're going to have more than 2 or 3 main points, but you can narrow the focus of those main points to the specific information your audience needs. So this is the way it works. You put together this statement. I will be informing you about hurricanes, or I'm going to tell you about Yorkshire Terriers. And what I'm going to discuss is their general size, their temperament, and their grooming necessities. I'm learning a lot about that, quite frankly. You get the point. It doesn't all have to be one sentence like officially in an essay, but it does need to all be in there so that as you start and go in through your speech, point to point to point, your audience knows exactly where you are, and they can place it in their mind, create that mental map for them so they know exactly where you're going next and how far you've gone. Mental map. Your audience needs that organization. It has to be very clear because they can become disoriented and lose track of your key points. And so if you create that central idea in a very clear fashion, then that provides the mental map they need. And here's a visual on how I have always taught this. I've always used this in my English classes as well. And so it's a very useful little model. I use it as my outline format. When I had to write an essay explaining why I wanted this job to work here, I had to start somewhere, and I started with this. I used this as my outline. This is my Roman numeral 1, Roman numeral 2, Roman numeral 3, Roman numeral 4, Roman numeral 5. It's a standard format that can work in so many different areas. But in this sandwich model, your introduction has your central idea with your main points at the end of it. And then you have a transition into your first main point. And then you transition into your second main point. You transition to your third main point. You transition to the conclusion where you restate your central idea. So now I've told you about their grooming issues. I've told you about the general sizes and I don't remember if that's what I actually said, and their general temperaments of Yorkshire Terriers, and then I can finish with the conclusion. I love this phrase. I used to tell it to my students all the time, and they got a kick out of it. Tell them what you're going to tell them, then tell them what you told them. You need to build that redundancy for that residual message. They need that redundancy for the residual message. They can walk out and say, okay, I may not remember every single thing, but I do remember this part right here. And that's the key feature. Now, that's where we're going to stop with this particular section of Chapter 13. All right, and I will see you soon to finish up Chapter 13.